Hello and welcome to this episode of the Game Plan Podcast by College Baseball Advisors. I'm your host, Wayne Mazzoni. My background is 30 years as a college baseball coach, current college baseball recruiting advisor. For more information about what I do, you can visit my website, collegebaseballadvisor.com. On the Game Plan, we try to get on really good baseball people and kind of look at baseball from all different angles, from development, mental game, skill, work, coaching styles, of course, recruiting. And on that note, I've created a new pitching program called Develop Elite Pitchability, which is basically my way of getting back to old school pitching. Of course, getting stronger, throwing plyos, upping your velocity is great, but I see a lot of these bigger, better athletes still walking people, having high ERAs in high school and college, and really don't have pitchability, which to me is elite command, any pitch at any time, performing under pressure, being consistent, and really changing speeds to get outs the old school way, like old pitchers used to do. So if you're interested in learning about that program, it's all self based learning, videos, and worksheets. You could go to go.collegebaseballadvisor.com/develop elite pitchability and take a look at the program. On today's episode, we had Seth Kaplan. Cap and I coached way back when at Sacred Heart together. Really fun interview about his background and, of course, his coaching style. He's from New City, New York, played baseball and basketball growing up, wound up getting recruited at the Empire State Games to go to UMass back when UMass was led by Coach Stone, and they were basically a juggernaut of baseball. So he talked about his experience playing at UMass, playing for Coach Stone, and then Ralph Serrato was an assistant at that point. Wound up getting him to coach in the NECBL, just starting the Rhode Island Gulls, which of course became the Newport Gulls, and that got his coaching career started. He then tells a great story how he got started at Sacred Heart back in late 99, almost 2000. Of course, his experience there, he's actually the one that got me to go start myself at Sacred Heart back in 2007. He ultimately got out of coaching and worked in administration in the athletic department, and then went to work at a travel program in the area before he got back into coaching as the head coach at Dean College, which was a 2-year school then, now a 4-year school. He then went on to coach at UMass Dartmouth and then was head coach at Leslie through COVID, and he's now at Westfield State. So we talked about his journey, lessons learned, his coaching style, his recruiting style, and I think there's a lot to take away from this episode. So without further delay, here is my talk with Seth Kaplan, head baseball coach at Westfield State. All right, Cap. So you're one of the guys that I probably know the best going into this podcast, which is why we could have kept going before I even hit the record button, just capping, catching up. But this is great that you and I love this because it's a dedicated time where I actually just get to talk baseball, no distractions. Although, as I prepped you on, my dog will be barking right around 12 when he gets picked up for his play date. But really, in this modern world of all of us running all over the place, to lock in and just talk, and it happens to be that I hit the record button. This is something that would be fun to do, even if we didn't. So I know a lot of your background, but there's some things I don't know, and that's why it's going to be fun to unpack this. So I had to look. I have embarrassed to say I had to look at your bio to get this first question. Were you born and raised New City, New York? Is that you were
That,
born? So you were born and raised all through there. Is that accurate?
that is accurate. Yep. Rockland County, New City, New York. Um, we lived on the line though, so I actually went over to Ramapo High School, which everybody kind of, when you know of New City, they ask you whether you were Clarkstown North or Clarkstown South, and I always go, "No, I went the other way," which wasn't a good thing, but that's all right.
Is that was that a choice or is that literally where your street is?
Yeah, that's where the street is.
Yeah.
So the dividing line was like, I don't know, a couple of, not even a mile down the road. So you could
Yeah.
say I was on the wrong side of the tracks.
Well, it's funny because growing up where I did, same thing, like one street over, you went to Comac High School. Those people were closer to than me than many other kids that I had kids 5 miles away that went to my high school, yet this dude 2 streets over is at a different school. And of course, we know you're a baseball guy. I really don't know, did you play other sports growing up, even through high school? What other sports did you do, if you did any?
Yeah, no, definitely growing up, certainly at the youth level, was soccer, basketball, baseball. And then and as I got into high school, it became a two-sport thing. I was basketball, baseball all the way through. 2 years on varsity as a basketball player. I sat the end of the bench. I was the backup point guard, which was fine for me, and I think fine for everybody. I played a couple of minutes when our starter got into foul trouble, and a couple at the end of the game when the game was in hand either way. So that was about it for my career.
I mean, so like I'm the world's worst basketball player ever. Like I'm terrible, but yeah, you're not a tall guy, but you're an athlete and you got a high sports IQ. So that's probably what allowed you even to be a backup, whereas most others wouldn't even have made the team, right?
No, that was definitely it. It was come in, run the offense. I was definitely the guy that knew who to get the ball to, especially in the time that I was playing, which was really garbage time. Who needed to score, who wanted to score, and certainly it wasn't going to be me anyway. So I was fine with giving up the ball as much as I did.
When in high school do you recall being your goal was to play in college baseball?
I think, I think it was definitely early. It was probably, certainly by my sophomore year, when you kind of sit back and realize that all the other courses of roads were not going to be drivable. So for me, it was baseball was always my first love anyway, and kind of always thought about playing college baseball. But certainly by my sophomore year, when you start to kind of look around and go, wow, I think I can do this. There are other guys around me that I'm playing with that, are certainly thinking the same thing. And, this is pretty cool. I think I can do this.
So obviously we know you ended up at UMass. What do you remember about the road? What do you remember about recruiting and the journey that, like, obviously different world, but what do you remember?
So yeah, it was definitely a different world. I think for me, it definitely started with, I was fortunate to make the Empire State team and play in the Empire State games, which at that time, as you remember,
Huge.
was it. So, you're playing in front of every pro scout in the games and certainly 50 to 100 schools. So it was wild to be in that environment. And that's kind of where I was exposed to it for the first time. And I was fortunate to play for Tony Abatini. So, you play for that guy who knows everyone. And he actually ran a showcase the following winter. So the winter of my senior year indoors was like, nobody ever did that. So,
right.
And I was fortunate to miss basketball practice. And then, I thought I played and did pretty well, and got a call from Ernie May, who was the assistant at UMass at the time. And May just started saying the right things, and out went where I thought I was going to go, which was UConn, or at least wanted to, until I had a conversation with Coach 𝐵𝐿𝐼, in which he was very wonderful and very open and very honest, and told me exactly what his roster looked like and where I would fit. And I was like, okay, well, thanks, but no thanks kind of deal. And even to this day, I actually saw him at Mohegan.
Totally.
And
right.
We talked about it again, and he was even gracious now as he was back then. So I always thank him for that, because again, here's a kid at that time, like you've talked about many times on the show, 17 years old, and you're like, this is where I want to go. And he was just honest with me. And it wasn't about my skills. It wasn't about anything other than, this is what we have in the roster. This is what we have coming in. Here's where we think you're at. If it's right, then it's right. If it's not, it's not. And, so for me, I was fortunate to kind of go a different path, and Ime was great. And obviously it led me to Coach Stone, and playing for Coach Stone for 4 years was just an incredible experience.
So a couple things there. I mean, I always write down as I'm doing these podcasts, obviously follow up questions, a variety of things, but like, hey, maybe future guests. And it's funny, I don't know if 𝐵𝐿𝐼 would do a podcast, but like, you talk about a salt of the earth human being, and just like truly a coach, that's the guy, right? And to his credit, like said to you and gave you feedback enough that, hey, UConn's not going to work. Let's look somewhere else, right?
Yeah. And you know what, he may, and I don't know if you'd get a word in, because his stories are phenomenal.
Yes, right, right.
And obviously, as you've come across many times with him, he is just so gracious and so warm and caring, and will tell you whatever's going on in his mind, which is just awesome and refreshing to hear, because he is that. He's salt of the earth. He's terrific. He's Andy 𝐵𝐿𝐼.
Now back to Stone. So Stone's not a guy I really ever got to know at all. I do remember, and we'll get to it when we coached together. Like, I remember you saying this about Stone to see if I'm accurate. The guy's a baseball like savant, like running practice, like unbelievable. So from a on the field practice guy, unbelievable.
He's the best I've ever seen.
Wow.
There's not one situation that we weren't prepared for. There isn't one situation that we didn't go over 15 times. I don't know how. I'm still trying to figure it out because I'm still trying to copy it. But he is as detailed on the field as anyone has ever come across. His BP was outstanding. His fungos were outstanding. His motivation was always interesting, but at the same time, he wanted the team to win, and that was what everybody got out of it, was the team is going in this direction, and if you're not on board with that, then get off, because he was taking the team where he needed to go. He was just that guy, and he just didn't understand anything else that would go on in the world. He was just, this is baseball, this is what we're good at, and we're going to do it this way, and let's go with it.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's kind of what you want. Like, right? Like, yeah, I don't need to be talking politics or any,
Nope.
like, just tell me what to do on like a bunt defense, right? Yeah. Couple things. What do you remember about your playing career on the field, that experience, many years later? What do you take away as your playing experience?
Yeah, I think and obviously he shaped a lot of that, right? He was, and it's funny because we talk about roster restrictions, right? Back then we only carried 25 guys on the
Wow.
roster. So,
Oh my God.
when he came up to me and he was like, "Hey, we're a little light catching wise right now. We've got two, and one of our guys is redshirting. Can you go catch bullpens?" Yeah, I'll go catch bullpens. The next year when he comes back and goes, "Hey, we're a little light with left-handed hitters. I remember, you switch hit at one point. Let's try hitting left-handed." So he gives us another option on the bench. Okay. And again, this is the fall, and he's thinking, 5, 6 months down the road, and I'm going like, I just want to make the team, man.
Right, right, right.
And he's like, well, this is going to help. Okay, well, great. Let me try it. Let me do some things. So yeah, I bounced around really from the start all the way through until my junior year when I finally locked down and stayed at shortstop. But yeah, I was at second, short, and third. I played some left and some center in the fall, certainly. And then I caught for about a year and a half as the 2 or the 3 or whatever you want to do it. But yeah, he was always looking for how to squeeze that one extra spot on the roster and who can cover it. And I was fortunate to fill that for a lot of, for a good number of years anyway.
I mean, it's funny. I'm sure there's a lot of positives to that 25 man. Everybody has a role. There's no one, there's no 10 guys complaining about the coach because they're not getting in right. At the same time, boy, you're a couple injuries away from really being in trouble. Not to mention, your development system is a little different, right? You don't have 4 pitchers or 5 pitchers who just have a role of like getting used to college baseball. So everyone's got to contribute, right?
And that was it. And that's what it felt like, right? It felt like, if a guy got hurt, it was okay, who's the next guy up? And, that guy's really, really good anyway. So put him in. And, you're fortunate to crack the lineup that day. But, when the starter comes back healthy, it's his job again. So, being a position player was like, it was difficult, but at the same time, you were sitting behind the all-time hits leader or that shortstop that's getting drafted or first team all-conference guy. And so you kind of knew that, those guys were really, really good in front of you. Let me learn from them. Let me play behind them and figure it out. And my time will come.
And then second part is, did you know prior to college, in college, that you wanted to go down the coaching path? And did Stone's, the way he run that program, lead you to think that way also?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my father's a high school coach. So it certainly was there for me. I think it finally crystallized really by my junior year in school. Was like, okay, this is kind of really where I want to go. Being a sports management major there is you're exposed to a lot of things as well. So I was kind of like, wow, there's a lot to do out here. But I kind of just want to coach. And I was really, really fortunate to be in the presence of some really good assistant coaches as well. And Stone was tremendous in everything. He let me throw BP, which was really cool. And I was fortunate that some of our assistants at the time couldn't throw BP. So,
Yeah.
it was like, hit early, get your swings in, and then kind of finish up that way. So he definitely saw it. I'd like to think he saw it in me, or I was just filling a need, but he definitely pushed me that way. And then Raf Serrato is really the reason that I got into it. He gave me my first break, so I was fortunate to have him as an assistant coach, and he was with us for 2 years, my last 2 years, and as the infield coach as well as the hitting guy. Raf was just, he was the guy. He's the best.
So you're saying that meaning your first job was with him? No, because I thought your first coaching job was at Sacred Heart, or no?
Yeah. So actually, my first was in the NECBL.
Okay, got it.
So Raf had just gotten, my senior year, he got the head job for the then Rhode Island Gulls, who hadn't moved to Newport yet.
Right.
So Raf was kind of midway through my senior year. He was like, "Hey, you're going to coach with me." And I said, "Okay, sure."
Right.
What do I got to do? And he's like, "No, you're going to take the infielders, or take the outfielders. You're going to help, with the infielders. You'll help with the hitters. You'll coach first base, but we'll kind of get into player development. We'll get into player acquisitions, which obviously I had no experience with.
Right.
Which obviously helps you now in recruiting." Yes. So yeah, he was really one that kind of exposed me to everything outside of the game. Certainly that summer, which was an interesting summer of year one in the NECBL for a program.
That summer was what year of were you still in college or had you graduated?
So I had just graduated. So that's summer of '99.
Okay. So you graduate, and now he's got you in there, which obviously it's the early stretch, but that's good baseball, of course, at that point, right?
It was phenomenal. I mean, we've got 5 or 6 guys drafted off that team. We finished 5th, so we were a game out of the playoffs. And basically we threw the thing together in June. Wow. Right before the season started, we were still pulling players in the first week of season.
Wow.
It was wild times. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun to kind of, coach guys and help guys that, really I had just played against. We had 4 guys from URI that, literally I played against a month before. So they kind of saw me as that kind of go between, and, a guy that could help them, but at the same time was still, only a couple months older than them. So
right.
It definitely helped me in the next journey when I finally got to Sacred Heart.
So take me through that. Was it that immediate fall where you started at Sacred Heart, and how did that come about? Because obviously really when I first met you were already at Sacred Heart, but yeah. I don't remember how that all started.
So here's the really funny story about this, right? And I've heard a bunch of guys talk about their break, and mine's kind of similar in this aspect. So our pitching coach in the NECBL at the time had an interview set up with Coach 𝐸𝐿 at Sacred Heart. 2 days before the interview, he gets and then accepts a teaching job in Rhode Island. So literally down the road from him, he gets the high school history job that he wanted.
Yeah.
So he and I had been preparing him for the interview at Sacred Heart. So he gets this job and he calls up Coach 𝐸𝐿 and he says, "Hey, I can't come down. I'm taking this job. Do you mind if I send somebody in my place?" Coach 𝐸𝐿, being Coach 𝐸𝐿, says, right. Sure, why not?
Right.
So the next day we head down to Danbury to play. I scoot over and sit down and meet Coach G for the first time, interview with him. I thought everything went pretty well. And then in typical G fashion, I don't hear anything for about 3 weeks. So, and then fortunately he called me back really beginning of August and was like, "Hey, if you still want it, the job's yours." I was like, "Yeah, let's go. This is awesome."
A couple of things. Did you have anything else cooking? Should that not have come through, / if it didn't come through, do you remember back to then going, well, maybe I'll do this, that, or the other? Like, did you start thinking about that at that point?
I hadn't yet. I was trying really to give myself the summer, and really just kind of focus in on, on coaching and being with those guys and riding it out. So I hadn't really thought about anything yet. It was getting late, in terms of what I was going to do or where I was going to go or really anything at that point in time. So no, to answer it, I hadn't really gotten to that point yet. I was, I guess, really fortunate that, first week in August or so, somewhere around there, that this kind of fell into our laps and kind of made it all work. So that was cool.
So, all right, let's reminisce here a little bit on this. So, it's 2026. Um, Sacred Heart, just the university is exploded. It's everywhere. They're doing an incredible job. Um, we took maybe talk a little baseball about how still they would love to have their proper field on campus. But if you go back to 99, first of all, was it just becoming Division One? What was give me the lowdown of the baseball that you remember that you walked
Sure.
into then.
Statistically, third worst team in the country.
Wow.
We and G is, and we'll get to G, but the school had decided that was really the first year of the transition. So, well, the two previous were the transition years leading from 2 to 1, and then the year was year one at the Division 1 level. So I came in right at that time, which was really cool as a GA to kind of see everything from the bottom up and really not have to go through the transition, but really kind of pick it up as just a straight Division 1 school. So that was really cool. Having said that, it was really, really different than it is right now. And really strange to kind of go back and see their progress and the explosion. Like you said, it's phenomenal what Pat has down there now is nothing like any of us had at any point in time. So, I wish those guys all the luck in the world. They've got a lot of good things going for them. But it was a little, as you remember, it was a little different practicing as far away as we did, and yet playing at Harbor Yard once in a while. So there was a lot to overcome, and G's phenomenal in terms of what he was able to pull through and really put together.
It's funny. I mean, we could talk forever about G, but his strength also drove me insane sometimes, which maybe you two were like, something would come up and be like, oh, you can't practice. Well, you have to go practice, 15 miles away at some crappy high school. And he'd be like, whatever. And I'd be like, go in there to the athletic director and tell him you need a field next week. Like, come on, and he'd be like, what? Like, that's why he lasted there so long, because if you demanded change, you'd be out on your butt in 2 minutes there, right?
Exactly. And you know what? I as like you, were extremely frustrated many, many times. And then you kind of, as you get older and you kind of go through different situations, you kind of go, okay, I see how he did that. And that was
Right.
really well done by him. And he's phenomenal. I mean, he's the things that you learn, or you hope that you learned back then, that are now kind of coming through, and you kind of lean back on those lessons. You certainly don't appreciate him at the time, but man, he's phenomenal. He's one of a kind. He's G.
Yeah, it's funny because, I still stay in touch with a lot of the players, and even sometimes at my house, I might have a little event. Some players come over, a couple of drinks, and it's almost like, in a little bit of a way, maybe sometimes we felt as coaches like could be frustrated as players sometimes, but now years later they go, "Wow, what a great situation we had!" Like, I never felt pressured in the lineup. It was a
Mhm.
great environment. Like, you had to grow up as he wasn't going to be all over you, you know. But like, if you didn't figure it out, it wasn't going to work for you. So he was kind of ahead of his time in terms of like a master at like emotions and life and all that stuff, right?
He really was. And I remember one conversation really, really distinctly. I said to him, I said, you've played in the Super Bowl. I said, what's catching a punt and a kickoff like in the Super Bowl when everybody's watching you? And he goes, it's like every other punt that anybody's ever kicked to me. And I'm like, no, like,
Right,
it's the
right.
Super Bowl. There are millions of people watching you. And then when you stop and think about it, and he's like, no, it's just catching the same thing and doing the same thing. And you're like, well, that's actually genius.
Right, right, right.
But that's not the answer that you want to hear at that time. Like, I want to know, like, put me in your shoes. Like, I want to know. And he's like, nah, it ball went up. I caught it and I ran. Like,
Right,
okay,
right. That describes it pretty good. You're right.
right.
So obviously, you guys and like, there were many guys during that time that would say to me before I got there, Cap's running the show. Like, he's running practice. He's doing all the heavy, well, G recruited always, but you did. So obviously it was '06, right, where the team before I arrive gets to the Georgia regional. So, I mean, obviously just a tremendous year, etc. Let's start with that. What do you remember about that conference tournament and going to that regional it must have been the culmination of a lot of hard work at that point.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. And that was a, as just a special group. And when you get that special group together and things break right, and maybe they broke them the right way, it was really, really cool to be a part of. And, you go out and win game one down in Lakewood, and, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 throws an unbelievable game. And then, you got to run into Andrew Bailey in game two. And Chris Aldrich was just absolutely phenomenal and matched him the entire game. And so that's the 1-0 game where you sit back and you go, wow, that could have gone either way. And 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭 takes the ball down the right field line and gets a triple out of it, and we score the run. And it's kind of like, wow, we're too, somebody's got to beat us twice now. And obviously you let the tournament play out, and I joke with Coach Hickey whenever I see him that he couldn't pull any magic out that day, which was wonderful. But it was just one of those teams that, everything went the way it was supposed to go once we got into the tournament. And it was just phenomenal to be around those guys. They work their tails off. They're just great human beings. And, I'm so happy. But at the same time, it's 20 years, and I can't believe it's 20 years since that team, put us on the map, so to speak. And that was a very rewarding season for me.
So I remember a couple of things. And one, obviously, you mentioned Andrew Bailey. I remember in my early time at Sacred Heart, like Bailey and Craig Breslow would be like long tossing in the gym, and now, of course, have tremendous careers. And now one's the GM, one's the pitching coach of the Red Sox. Like,
Yeah.
it's really, quite interesting. The other thing I remember is coming in and realistically, I got to Sacred Heart through you. I was the head coach at Post, which was torture, and then I no offense, it's better now. And then I was at Holy Cross, and that was a pain, etc. And then I see you at Mohegan, and I remember you say to me like, "Hey, we got a spot, and you should consider this." And that's ultimately what led to me. And then when I get there, I do remember walking in, first of all, and like you said, when you walk in there, it's a little adjustment period. That's any job, right? But I also remember thinking, uh-oh, these guys think they're pretty good. Like they came off the regional and now, right? And there was definitely a learning curve right away to have that success and then get back and grind it out, But of course, yes, some really good players there. So you and I coached together. Was it only one season or more? How many was
it? It was one season, and then I left. I went downstairs in the pit center for to kind of run the building. But so it was one season and then a fall. We had 1.5 together.
I mean, so looking back on it, that must have was that difficult? I assume it was difficult to sort of step away from coaching at the same time, even though people are still grinding out jobs in 2026. There seems to be college baseball's got more opportunities than ever. But was that just a no-brainer financial decision? Like, I can actually get paid a decent wage and not have to work crazy hours? Basically, was that kind of what led to it, or?
That was exactly it. Our daughter had just been born. So it was like, somebody's going to pay you more money to spend more time with her and, take care of the family. And yet you don't have to move. You literally you're moving, one flight down in terms of your office. It was really, it was a no-brainer at that point. Obviously, I didn't want to stop coaching, but at the same time, it was life, and we made a life decision at that point, and reverse course very very quickly after that. At that time, it was the right move for the family.
So when was your last year at Sacred Heart?
So then it was that was the 2008 year. So it was probably middle of 2009 was when I left Sacred Heart.
Okay, so I mean, realistically, not a full decade, but boy, you were there quite a long time.
Yeah.
Right. And in fact, we're going to go through some of the other stuff is that your still longest tenure at a place?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, definitely. It was fun. I mean, you were there. It's a place where you can do a lot. You really can. And hopefully it hasn't changed that in a lot of people. And obviously there's some really good people still there. And obviously I keep in touch with Leo as well. So he was a big part of a lot of success there. So, but you can do a lot there, and it's such a great area, and it's such a great environment. And, it's easy to get back to Long Island. It's easy to get back to the city. It's easy to get up here to Massachusetts. So, it's a really good spot, and I'm glad for their success.
Yeah, the one thing about Sacred Heart that most people don't realize, like if you walk down the street and said to 10 random people, how many sports does LSU offer and how many sports does Sacred Heart offer? Most people would probably, say LSU must have 30 and Sacred Heart has 15, something like. And they don't realize that LSU probably has 16 sports, the minimum, because they're putting crazy money. And Sacred Heart has 33 or 34 now,
Yep.
right? So that's one of the things that makes it. I mean, everyone there's an athlete. There's a million coaches, and it's a great environment. At the same time, outside of what's become a pretty elite hockey facility, everybody's still kind of clawing, to be the best in their conference, right? But
Right.
of course, still great people, et cetera. But all right, so and I've got down UMass Dartmouth, Dean, Leslie, Westfield. Was
Yeah.
UMass Dartmouth the next move?
No, so actually the next move was staying local. I went over to the batting cage, and I did the youth sports, and I ran into our good friend Chad Knight, and I had those guys for about a year and a half. So the talent that came through when I was there, and really because of the Fournier family, it was just incredible. So obviously, Ben Kasperius is sitting up with the Dodgers right now. So we had Ben as a 12-year-old playing up with the 13s. I coached Chad for a year and a half. So really good kids. Obviously, the Fairfield American kids end up at Williamsport. Then the next year, Westport ends up at Williamsport. So, here I am, and I finally get to Dean as the head coach. But, I'm watching the guys that I've coached and helped, on TV in Williamsport. So that was really, really cool to kind of see that group go on and have the success that they had. And that was a lot of fun just to be around those guys on a daily basis. So that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, I had a connection to a couple of those teams that went on the Westport one with Chad, and that's a wild experience, man. Like, here it is, these little kids that who are awesome kids, they all of a sudden they're thrust in this spotlight, and I don't know to a person if they felt the pressure, like because I think Williamsport, which I've never been to, sadly, does such a great job of putting all the kids together and they're having a blast outside. But boy, that you're thrust into the national spotlight very quickly from a kid at age, 12 or 13. So it's pretty cool.
It is really cool, and you're right. And I would get a couple phone calls from the parents of just like, hey, this is really really cool experience, and I would just soak it all in because it's really fun watching you guys on TV. So that was fun. That was a good time.
So Dean was the next job, right?
Dean was the next
Okay, Dean.
job.
Yeah.
Yep, a good friend of mine, John Crott, who was
Oh,
at
I haven't heard
Bryant.
that name in a
Yep.
while, man. John
So
Crott.
and then John was Coach Sjogren, who you had on, a little while ago.
Yep.
Shogi had just gotten the job at Rollins, and he was going to take John with him. And John had just finished his first year at Dean as the head coach. So John called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to follow me here?" And I said, "Yeah, let's get back into college coaching." And so that's kind of how that happened. And so I followed him as he made his move back down to Rollins.
So Dean was a 2-year school that is now 4, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And was that a full-time job at Dean for you?
Yeah, so I was full time baseball, with equipment room responsibilities,
Okay, got it.
which was an interesting experience. Junior college football is a different world. Certainly, as the equipment guy, it is a wild world.
Right.
So there's some fun times there, but yeah, it was great to be a junior college head coach coming off of teaching kids and being at the youth level because the talent obviously was different, but the backbone of what you were trying to do was really, really the same. And if I didn't have those years as a youth coach, I definitely wouldn't have been as successful as we were when I got to Dean, because I would have tried to run it the same way I knew it at Sacred Heart. And you really have to start over every year, and you've got to reteach and reteach and reteach. And that's both good and bad, but you get to lay out your expectations and your goals, and you have to do it. And there's no upperclassmen that you have because they're not in the building,
Yep.
to kind of pass that on. So, and we were trying to push all our sophomores out and even our freshmen out at that point in time to get to a 4-year school. So it was get them in, get them coached, get them out as quickly as you possibly can.
I mean, those jobs, you're right, it's a lot of work because
Yep.
you're constantly recruiting, as everyone is. But then on the other side, you have the job that I have now, which is trying to place kids, right? Which is work in itself. And then you're coaching, and obviously this is now you're running the program for the first time. So you got that, and then you probably have an administrative piece of things that, right? So it must have been awesome slash a little daunting to run that.
It definitely was. It was what I didn't realize, and what I would tell any junior college head coach now is the month of April is both wonderful because you're finally on the field full time, but it's miserable because your sophomores are all thinking about checking out and where they're going. And if they don't have a spot yet, like every pitch, they think is life or death. Every swing is like, I got to get a hit here because, so-and-so is watching me, or the film's going to that school later on. And you're just trying to win a game. And, forget putting a sack bunt down, right? Like that kid needs his stats. He needs to hit. So, it's how to marry the offensive game with the team game, with the individual game. And it's a challenge. It is a challenge, but I'll tell you what, any coach coming through that can do it, or spends any time at the junior college level is going to be a heck of a recruiter, but a heck of a coach going out too, because it's tough. Every day is tough.
And it's funny, I have had a number of people on that are more Midwestern coaches, Western coaches. It's a way of life out that part of the country where it's just not as much here. And there was many coaches I've had on here that said their mentors told them, if you want to move up in this business, not only with your resume, but with knowing what the heck to do, you got to go junior college for a little while, which is it. Dan 𝐟𝐸𝐾, the head coach at Murray State, is one of those guys that built his skills in every way at a junior college. So it's interesting. You stayed at Dean how long?
I was there 5 years.
5 years. Okay. And then okay, I know obviously before Westfield, which we're going to get to, was Leslie. Where did the UMass Dartmouth fit in?
So yeah, it comes in right now.
Okay.
And this is again one of those life decisions. My wife had decided at that point that she wanted to go get her doctorate. And with the transition from Dean, finishing up as a junior college, going to the Division III, I was like, okay, well, this seems like a really, really good time, to put her forward and her first. And our son had just been born, so 2 kids now, and it was like, all right, let's just go and do this. So she made the move, got into the UMass Dartmouth program, and she's in residential life. So we packed up and all followed her to the South Coast. And I walked into Bob Prince's office, and I knew Bob a little bit, but not a whole lot. And I said, hi, I'm living on campus. I want to help. And he was like day one, let's go. Awesome. What do you want to do? So it was great. She's awesome.
And we of course know that Dawn is smarter than you, and now it's yes. Official now too. But it was
way smarter than me.
Exactly. And then again, what was the time frame at UMass Dartmouth before Leslie?
Yeah, so 3 years at UMass Dartmouth, and that's 16, 17, 18, somewhere around there.
Okay. Tell me about how did Leslie come about and that experience?
Yeah, so again, life decision, right? We had, as a family, decided that that was enough time at UMass Dartmouth. Dawn goes out and gets a job at Smith, and so we kind of move across the state. But before we had done that, I had applied for the job at Leslie and didn't hear anything. So, we move out here really end of July, beginning of August. And then I get a call from Steph Smurl, the AD, and she's like, hey, do you still want to interview for the job? And I was like, well, I'm kind of farther now.
Right.
But again, you sit down and discuss things as a family. And, I'm fortunate that Dawn is an athlete, but also understands the game. And she's like, listen, like, if you want to be a head coach, this is something you got to go do. And it was part-time at the time. So it was like, okay, let me go in and, I can make practice, I can make games and kind of go and do and still be home for the family. And, it's a little bit of a travel on the pike, but no big deal. And so we did that for the fall, and then January rolled around and they made me full-time, and which was awesome. And then, the world fell apart with COVID. So that was a very interesting year one where I have no idea who our team is because I've only seen them for 8 games.
Oh my God.
And now I got to go recruit to a place where, I didn't spend a whole lot of time in the fall. I basically showed up to practice, went to a few games, and now I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. And Leslie was an interesting experience. So yeah, it was, as everybody knows, it was wild in different times then.
Boy, I mean, of course, COVID comes up on these things, but
Yeah.
like, I mean, in retrospect, I don't think we all needed to shut down and do we could have still played baseball, no problem. But you at the time you don't know, et cetera, et cetera. But it in a lot of ways, listen, a lot of people obviously died from it, but at the same time, it screwed up college sports and certainly baseball in a lot of way where like in your situation, you walk into a new place, but other teams had like prime for 2020 is going to be year we go huge and it doesn't happen and seniors graduate, et cetera. It was really difficult,
We were I remember being in Florida, we've got the whole staff down there and obviously, things are breaking and the Ivy League's canceling. And, Leslie follows everything that Harvard does. So, you read the tea leaves and you're like, well, wait a minute, Harvard's shutting down. We're like 2 blocks from them. Leslie's going to shut down at some point. And so you're trying to figure out like how to navigate this while you're sitting there playing, a doubleheader in Florida, like trying to figure that out. So, at one point I actually looked around and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep guys out of the games because I don't know what the NCAA is going to do. And,
right?
if they play more than 8 games, maybe they don't get the year back. So, and then they gave everybody the 2 years back. So
2 years back, right.
Which was in and of itself. But yeah, so we were, trying to navigate that. And then, you get on a plane and come home and, I'm at Logan and I get the phone call that, everything is done. Have them pack up and they got to be out of the dorms in 2 days. All right.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and one of the things I personally remember about Sacred Heart when I was there at the time is that they kept me on in my role, like, and I thought it was great where they could have just said, "Hey, coaches aren't needed for now" or whatever, and they which was really great because I know a lot of places handled it differently. I'm assuming at Leslie they kept you, nothing
Yeah.
changed. Yeah, which was
No, nothing
fantastic.
changed. It was a good time to be full time.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly, exactly. All right, so let's get to Westfield now. So
Yeah.
let's, if you can, give me and everyone an overview on the school and on the baseball program.
Yeah. We're it's a phenomenal place. Westfield State, obviously located in Westfield, Mass. So we are about 15 minutes from Springfield. We're about 25 minutes back roads to Hartford. 2 hours to Boston, 2.5, 3 hours to New York City. So we're in a really, really good spot out here in the West. Hour and a half to Albany. So you shoot across the Berkshires that way. You've got everything here that you could possibly want, and the school is phenomenal. We're a big criminal justice school. We're still a big educational school. Most of our guys are in either those two or the School of Business. Nursing is a huge major for us. So someone is always connected to Westfield State, and it's usually a cop, which for me is a good thing.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's great to kind of be out and around and wearing Westfield State stuff and realize that somebody knows somebody who knows somebody who went here and really had a really good time. So campus is probably 4,000 students or so. So it's kind of in that smallish medium
Good size,
range,
yeah.
which is great. And campus is laid out in a phenomenal way in terms of academics on one side, residential on the other. So it really kind of works in everything that kind of goes on up here. And we're in our own world. Most of the conference is still back east. So it's kind of just us. MCLA is still a little further away from us, but we're in a really, really cool spot in terms of making everything kind of work for us.
Obviously, you said you're now in the press box,
Yeah.
so the field is on campus.
Field is on campus. Maz, I got to tell you, as someone who, for how many years did you plan on, which half hour were we going to be in the car or the van trying to get to a practice, to be able to kind of roll out of the office or roll out of the press box and, stumble onto the field or forget something and, run back and 2 minutes later, you're still back on the field and you haven't missed anything. There's nothing like to have your own field and to be able to work on it. Is just, it's great. It really is.
What, I mean, we're not that far from each other physically at the moment. Here, there's really almost no snow left, and it's a gorgeous day.
Yep.
Are you almost there? Same thing?
We're close. The mound is now visible, which is good. A lot of the grass is starting to be visible, so the snow's kind of going away. It's weird to kind of think that when you're 1-5 on the season, and you played some games, and we'll be on our turf. Our turf was plowed, so that's all set. We'll be out there on the field later today for practice. But hopefully with today, with tomorrow, we got a shot at playing in a week and a half or so when we're supposed to open up at home.
Okay. So let's get a little more specific into a couple things about you. Do you have a philosophy of the way you run the program, coaching style, culture, anything like what's the best you could say about what your approach is, your style is to running the program?
Yeah, I'm as hands-on as anybody, but at the same time, I really want our guys to be able to lead. So I tend to spend an awful lot of time with our upperclassmen, of just kind of teaching them how are the things that we need run, right? And I was really, really fortunate when I walked in here. Coach Bashaw did such a really good job before me, and he's just an awesome dude.
He is.
And to be able to kind of take what he has and just move that in, where I want to go with this program, and have the support of our athletic director and staff, and just kind of go back to our guys and say, listen, this is where we once were. This is where we're going to go. You guys are going to take this. So we need to be and this and do this and do this. So culture is a big part of what we're doing. It's what we talk about in meetings all the time. I like to do a lot of post-practice meetings. So we've got 3 during the week that we do. So we really try and keep our guys in the building and on the field as much as possible. But really it comes down to competition, right? It's something that you got to be able to look the guy who's behind you, and know that he can take your job. And, if he can come, if the guys behind the starters can push the starters, then the starters obviously get better. And that's no secret. That's Nick Saban. That's every successful coach from all the way down. And, I'm a big Miami football guy, so I'm a big U guy, and that's Jimmy Johnson, right? Like, let's bring in the best that you can bring in and have them go knock each other's heads off at practice every day. And that's really kind of how we try and do it.
So that's a perfect transition to this next thing. Recruiting wise, is there anything, I guess I'll ask you 2 questions. Is there anything play style, position player, pitcher that you look for on the field? And is there any then off the field personality traits that you either need to see, or if they something that scares you away? Like, so just talk, how about from the actual on field, is there some, like, are you just going for any good ball players? Is there something that Cap likes in his style of the way he looks for guys?
Yeah, I think for me, it's speed first, right? Speed and athleticism. We play in a huge yard, so our outfielders need to go get it, and so they're going to play a little bit deeper, which means our infielders need to be able to go back on balls. So, speed and athleticism is definitely something that we look for. Obviously, everybody always says they want the best players, and yes, we always do. For me, it's more of where do guys kind of fit in what we're trying to do, and that's bang the ball on the line and go get it. We were fortunate last year that we have a ton of bangers in the lineup, and we set every kind of school record, that you could think of offensively. And it was a lot of fun to sit back and watch our guys go deep all the time. But at the end of the day, good pitching stops good hitting. So, you got to be able to get on base some way. You got to be able to manufacture runs, because that never goes into a slump.
Right.
So that's ultimately how I want to play. But, you got to get guys that want to buy into a team first philosophy. And that's kind of been a little bit more challenging, as, the portal has taken over and recruiting has gone in a different direction. But at the same time, those kids are still out there, and they want to be coached and they want to win. And those are the guys that you got to find. That's who I want.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I mean, you know, I think, I've had a lot of various coaches on here at all different levels, and it seems to me most of the Division III coaches, in a lot of ways, seem to have a more enjoyable job. They're holding on to players longer. there's not the crazy, like, listen, I'm sure you work your butt off, but you know the deal of like what it's like to coach at a school and travel, recruiting all over the place, and not to mention, at a lot of levels of Division I baseball, if you don't win, there goes your job, right? So there's a lot to be said about that. I could see that being a frustrating thing where you have a kid, because when I advise a kid and he says, well, maybe I'll go here and I'll do well and I'll transfer, I say, listen, that's not the kind of person I want to do. Like, first of all, I hope you go there, get playing time, become a team leader, be an all-time great, get friends for life. Don't go there
Mhm.
going out. Now, listen, yeah, at some point, maybe you got a kid, he's got a year left and he's so unbelievable. And he goes, Coach, I just, maybe I want to play after college. I want to see, can you, I'm sure you would go, dude, I'm ready to help you any way
Yep.
possible, right? But to like be like, well, no, I'm not dropping a sack bunt down for some, I think I might punch him in the head. So there, I don't want you to even have to comment, but it must be an interesting fine line to be in this environment that we're forced into now, right?
It is. And obviously I go back to my, days as a junior college head coach, right? Like, I kind of know what that world looks like.
Right.
And I can also say, and you alluded to it, just before, you got to be where your feet are, right?
Yeah.
You've got to live in the now, and you've got to remind kids of that. Like, okay, that may be great. You may want to get out of here as fast as humanly possible, but you still have to produce when you're here. And, somebody's going to be calling me if you do that. And
Right.
so I've got to be able to back you. And, I'm going to tell somebody the truth because that's what I expect when I pick up the phone. So, these are the things that, you got to remind kids of, and as you know, because you deal with them all the time, they're always looking for what's going to happen next,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not what happens now.
That's
And you
true.
got to remind them every day, hey, it's about now. Yes, we'll always keep our eye on the future. And yes, we're going to learn from our mistakes in the past. But what are you going to do today that makes you better to put yourself in a really good position tomorrow rather than worrying about what's coming tomorrow?
Yeah, and I don't know if this happens to you too, because it does to many schools at all levels, is you maybe there's a guy you're going for, the kid can play. He chooses a school that in your gut you probably know is too much, but hey, kid's got to take a shot. And then you get the call 6 months, a year later, and he's like, hey, do you open the door to that kid to come back?
Yeah, definitely. I think, for me, I'm a big second chance guy anyway. So, definitely would explore that. Have explored that, and if that can happen, then great. I think, where and I, you and I share very similar philosophies on this. Where in the past you'd slam the phone down and you'd kind of, well, you're making a terrible mistake. This is the worst thing you could possibly do, and you burn that bridge. Right
Right,
now, it's
right.
like, well, wait a minute, that guy, it's a mistake. He's going to come back at some point. So, obviously, you hope that it works out, but hey, listen, we're here for you. And when it doesn't work out, and you get cut after your first year, or they kind of bring in three other dudes at your position, you might want to think about coming back.
Yeah, and I even tell guys when you make a choice, the other schools that recruited you in any capacity, give them a call and tell them, not because it's just what humans should do, but hey, you never know what happens. You might want to go back, or that coach changes jobs, and it's just, this is a relationship business, so to keep those doors open. But all
It,
right,
it is
yeah,
it
go
is
ahead.
amazing how the kids don't realize that we actually talk to each other and that we like each other and that we spend a ridiculous amount of time with each other as coaches. It's just weird that and I get it that they don't see that and they probably shouldn't see that, but um, to anybody who's watching, hey, guess what? We talk to each other. It's like it gets around.
Amen. You're right. It's true. Obviously, during the season, it could be on the phone, setting up games, just whatever, a little bit before the game. But in the summer, you're next to these guys all the time at
Mhm.
events, et cetera, et cetera. But all right. Last thing I wanted to ask you, which you mentioned, of course, earlier about Mohegan. Mohegan Sun sponsors this, which is great. We know that event is a godsend in our area of the woods, right? Because there's other conventions. There's a national one, which is expensive and it's a huge undertaking. Whereas us in New England could drive over to Mohegan and see this great event. On that note, what advice might you have for a high school sophomore, freshman, junior, and parent that wants to play college baseball, what do you think? What's one or two things you'd want to tell them about what needs to happen to make that come true?
Yeah, I think, and it's funny going through the other side, and I know you've gone through as a parent, um, where I'm at right now with our two kids, and we've got an eighth grader and a high school junior. So I'm right there with you on this one.
Big time.
It's strange being it's very strange being on the other side of this. But really, what I would tell them, and I'm very happy with our both of our kids yesterday. They're both in the weight room, doing what they need to, and I think it comes down to that the physicality of baseball today, it's unmatched. It
Yeah,
hasn't happened. It certainly wasn't the case when I was going through it, or even starting out coaching wise.
right.
So to be able to be in the weight room, to be able to get stronger, lift the right way, there's that's the success, right? That's the recipe for success. So you got to be able to do that. The other one that I would say is, and it goes back to a long time ago, but it's see as many schools as you can.
Yeah.
See as many schools as you can, and see as many games as you can. And I know that's really, really difficult with the high school schedule. With the amount of time that's being asked of you. But certainly in the fall, you got to go out and watch games. You've got to be able to figure out where you're at as a player. You got to be able to see coaching styles. You got to be able to see how the kids interact in the dugout, how they talk to their parents, and really just take it in, because you may dismiss a school for the silliest of reasons until you go out there and watch them play and go, wait a minute, I didn't realize they were really this good. Or they're not that good. I don't want to be a part of that, or I really do want to be a part of that. And you're never going to see that until you go out and watch them play. And I don't want to say that had sealed it for me when I was making my choice, but I certainly remember going up and watching a game and just seeing the environment, and kind of going, yeah, this is exactly what I thought college baseball should be. And really, that for me was where it helped me make my choice that way.
So thank you for saying that, because when I talk to any audience, all athletes, baseball only, whatever, I always say you got to go visit campuses because you got to see what's out there, and you do have to watch in person. This day and age, you could stream a lot of things, but it's not the same as watching, in person. It's absolutely crucial, and I think many people don't do that for whatever reason. But here we are in the Northeast. You could catch, I mean, Boston College is playing UConn today.
Mhm.
Sacred Heart's at Yale, and then all different levels. And it's what you should see, because people automatically think, well, I probably am a Division One player. How do you know? How do you know
How do you
what
know?
level? Yeah, you really don't. So that's excellent advice. All right, Cap, you're the man. I'm so glad we did this and we connected. And I definitely hope you have a great season and the weather warms, the snow, melts, and you have an awesome year.
Thanks, Maz. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the next time that we can do this to discuss, your love, but certainly my love of Dave Matthews as well. Because I know you can go on for hours on that.
Hey, I got a tattoo right there. It's not many people that have a Dave Matthews
There
tattoo.
it is.
All right, thanks, buddy.
You got it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Game Plan podcast by College Baseball Advisors. I'm your host, Wayne Mazzoni. For my new video-based program online course on developing pitchability, basically how to get outs. Of course, throwing hard is great, but how to actually get outs, get more innings, and advance your career. You could go to go.collegebaseballadvisor.com/develop elite pitchability and take a look at the program. Also features videos from Butch Thompson, Scott Brown, Pete Walker, Pete Woodworth, Pete Mackey, a lot of Pete's, but all those guys are pro pitching coaches, and really good videos explaining how to get better command, change speed, especially change it on your fastball, how to get it a viable go-to changeup. So I hope that helps you. And again, hope you enjoyed this episode with Seth Kaplan from Westfield State. Our next two guests are Bill Currier, head baseball coach at Fairfield University, and then we have Dom Johnson, I was introduced to Dom through Tracy Smith, head coach at Michigan. Dom runs an awesome setup in his backyard in San Diego, and he's basically a pitching whisperer, pitching guru who's coached players at all different ages to very high levels, including many, many, many big leaguers. So we'll have those two on next. Thank you so much and hope to see you soon.